All right, we're here for a special episode of EV Obsession. We'll get back to the news tomorrow, but today we're going to do a special episode just running through Joe's EV list.
Well, thanks, Zach. This is a really interesting list. We did this originally back in 2022 in the early part of the year. That was back when Elon Musk was comparing Canadian PM Justin Trudeau to Hitler and started a lot of people getting upset with Elon, saying he might be going too far. And then the idea is there's a lot of people who might be ready for an electric car, but they don't want to handle the baggage of Elon, whether it's, alt right or just internet or just kind of the unsavory stuff. There's a lot of people who don't want to support Tesla. And I don't necessarily agree with it one way or the other, but at the
Oh,
same
stop
time,
lying. You 100% agree with it. That's why
I
you write
think
these
there's
articles.
I think there's plenty of reasons to not buy a Tesla that don't involve Elon Musk. How about that?
Well, I was confused because I was like, there's plenty of reasons to buy a Tesla that don't, but yes, uh, there are reasons to buy Teslas and there are reasons to buy other cars. So
Exactly right.
this is what that's about. Obviously, Tesla has had about 60 to 70% of the EV market in the US for a long time. It's getting closer to 50 now. Um, it's there's a lot more variety, a lot more options than there were even a year ago, or 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It's
That's
getting to
right.
be a really exciting, more mature market. So there are real good options on the market if you don't want one of these four Teslas
Yeah.
or the
And I will
Cybertruck.
say this as we do this, the biggest takeaway for me was when we did the original list and I got to the Model X, there really weren't any 7-passenger SUVs that were full electric 2 years ago that I could recommend. And now I have a choice of like 3 or 4 different ones that I think are fully viable. So yeah, if you want to go through the list and start us off, I will defend my choices and we'll see how your choices stack up.
Yeah, no, I think best is to go through yours and then I'll respond. So I like how you arranged it. You did alternatives for each of the Tesla models. So that's I think a fun way to look at it.
Yeah, and I tried to go with the ones that would be the most common. I think the Model Y is the Tesla that most people are going to buy. That's obviously the one that is the most popular. It's the one that seems to be the most compelling and attracting the highest number of, I think, converts, not only from outside the Tesla brand, but also within Tesla. I think there's a lot of Model 3 buyers that are graduating, if you will, to the Model Y. And I think that that's a great place to start. It's a great size vehicle. It's kind of got that compact SUV package going. It's got great range, great performance, and it's a sharp vehicle. And I think of the products that are out there, I think the Mustang Mach-E is conceptually the most similar. The Kia EV6, obviously a beautiful car that's very fast, but to me in this segment, I think the Hyundai Ioniq is the one. Is that's to me that's the car. I love the look of this thing. It looks very much like an Italian rally car from the 80s and 90s. Inside, it's very light and airy, and kind of the best parts of the more optimistic Star Trek series. I think this thing looks great. I love driving it. I really have been taken with this car, and a lot of other people have too. It's 2022 World Car of the Year. Everybody who's driven this, nobody that I've ever met has come out of one of these things and said, I don't know, it's not that good. The only thing I would say against this car in terms of whether or not I would recommend it to somebody over a Model Y is that for now you are stuck with the CCS charging infrastructure, which is, let's say, not as good as Tesla's. It's just not. Tesla's supercharger network is vastly superior, but they are with the Magic Dock. There are more Tesla superchargers that are CCS compatible. This is going to open up a lot more. And in another year or two, you will start to see NACS Hyundais come out. And I think that's going to change the game completely.
Yeah, we should say too that you have this car. This
We
is
should say too that I followed my own advice.
yeah,
In
and
in the in
yeah,
the
if
2022 list, I said you should get the Volvo, and I bought the Volvo. And yeah, I think at least 50% of this is me just justifying my own purchase.
and if you watched the show yesterday, you know that I ran into a guy who got one of these as a rental, planned to have a Tesla rental, and then was confused and a bit in a pickle when he found out he couldn't charge it at the supercharger where I was about to leave. But yeah, watch that show if you missed it. It's interesting. I mean, these are the EVs at the top of my in my top tier of I want that EV list. So along with the Model Y. So it's basically these these vehicles. I initially thought I liked the EV6 more. I just thought it looked really sleek and cool and had more range. It just seemed overall a better package. Um, but as I've seen them on the road, I like the Ioniq 5 a lot more. I don't know. I mean, even initially when I saw them on the road, I thought, oh, I like the EV6 more. But over time, I just have grown to much prefer the Ioniq 5. Just looks so cool, and it just, I don't know, it's got, yeah, this light feeling about it. This like, is, just, and it's
Doesn't
such
take
a,
itself too seriously.
yeah, it's such a dark, difficult world with so many issues these days. It's nice to have a vehicle that just looks light and uplifting, and like that just beats everything else. And that's what the Ioniq 5 screams. It's
Yeah.
like fun but practical, like futuristic but not ridiculous.
Exactly.
And
And you have the 10-year warranty on the thing, which is nice.
yeah, the one of the things I think you mentioned to me early on was uh why would you, when I think I was like, why would you get an Ioniq 5 instead of an EV6? EV6 has better specs and stuff. And
Sure.
the EV6 does not qualify for a full tax credit right now, whereas Ioniq 5 does. Is that correct? I think that's
I
I think,
believe that's still correct.
I
I
think the
know
Ioniq,
for a time it was.
yeah,
But
the
I think
EV6 gets
more than
half.
that, yeah, I think more than that, I find the Ionic to be more comfortable to drive. It's got a little bit of a different look. It's funny, because I've had this conversation with James Bell, who runs Kia's comms, and we've talked to the designer of both cars, the stylistic lead, the stylist, and he's inspired by the same Italian company. I mean, this is if you're of this world and you're old enough to remember the old Group A and Group B rallying, you look at the Ioniq 5 and you go, that's a Lancia Delta. And you look at the EV6 and you go, that's a Lancia Stratos. And that is like a deep cut automotive nerd kind of thing, because neither car was ever available in the US. And you're asking yourself, what is the Hyundai connection? Well, the original Hyundai Pony concept car that was trotted out in 1974, that was all about launching Hyundai, that really became the kind of basic starting point for the Lancia Delta and down the road. And the Kia here, this is a great video. I'm glad you clicked on this. This was at the world premiere of the Kia EV6 GT, and they rolled this car out alongside Lamborghinis and 911 Targas and the McLaren, the AMG GT, a car I'm very intimately familiar with, having done some work on a couple of those. These are really fast, good-looking cars, and the Kia just, I wouldn't say wipes the floor with them, but it holds its own. And for a car that's about a third the price as the cheapest one there, maybe not the 911 Targa, but it really kind of proves its performance car metal here. This is a seriously fast car.
That's really impressive. Doesn't win,
Yeah,
but it's out in the lead for a while before the
but it loses to a McLaren.
Yeah, ridiculously expensive McLaren passes it up.
$700,000
They should not
car.
be on the same track. It's crazy. Yeah, well, I think I love that vehicle. I think it's beautiful. There's something about the back of it, how it seems a little bit too bulky and extended. I don't know, to me nowadays, but I still love it. It's still would be one of my top choices. I love the robot dog commercial it had in the Super Bowl
The
last year,
robot dog was
or
cool.
this year.
Yeah.
And that was a good commercial. Like some EV commercials are like, that was a good and funny one.
Yeah. And I took some heat for this because I did put a lot of Koreans on the list, and I took some heat for that in the comments. There were some people who were like, there's some real weird, like,
well,
ultra right wing.
There's a guy who's not, he's that, I don't, he's just a very big,
very special guy.
Tesla Elon only fan.
Yeah.
So
And the reality is, if your most recent experience with a Hyundai was from, let's say, 2017, you have no idea what you're talking about. You need to go get in one of these new ones. They are so much better than the previous generation Hyundais. It's not even funny. It's a completely transformed car brand, and yeah, there's
Then
nothing more
there's
to say.
the Ford Mustang Mach-E, as you may have heard before. We got to test drive one for a week when there were just 4 in the U.S.
Yeah,
They shipped it over from Miami for us, and we loved it. And everywhere we went, like the guy at the window at Starbucks, some old couple walking by Winn-Dixie, like everybody was like, "Oh, is that new electric Mustang, electric Ford?" I was
that's
like,
right.
"Wow, people know about this car!" Like, and everyone loved it. Everyone loved it. It was. I had a Model 3 at that point for a couple of years, I think, and like nobody cared anymore about the Tesla. I mean,
Oh,
some people here and there, but they were but everybody was like, "Oh, can I look at it? Can I go and get in it? Can I, how is it?" So it was really uh attractive and fun and popular from the start. I don't like this color at all, like the grabber blue that we had.
yeah.
That's the color. If
I like
I
the yellow.
I like
Nobody
the
asked
I
me.
like the yellow, even though I don't really normally go for that. We saw one yesterday. I was like, "Oh wow, look at that." I like the white a lot, but it would be between the white and the grabber blue for me,
Yeah.
especially
And
in
I think
Florida.
it's funny. I want to point this out. We talked a little bit yesterday about Tesla's wraps, the new wraps that they were coming out and how kind of mild they were.
Yeah,
I think all of the really wild Mach-E colors would make great wraps for a Tesla.
yeah. I mean, the yellow and the blue are like, that's what you want, something like that. I mean, that's Mustang doing it right well. So I liked it a lot. I thought it was very comparable to the Model Y, and I really enjoyed it. I didn't find it as comfortable, and I didn't like the drive quality as much as the Model Y. Just was more jerky, and like, and the seats were not as comfortable. My wife, I think, preferred the seats a little bit. Just sort of feel like it was just sort of like something new and different. And
Yeah,
it
no,
was
my
like,
wife really liked this one, and her best friend actually ended up buying one
we did.
after
Oh,
we had it.
oh, what color did she get?
She got the yellow.
Oh wow, look at
Yeah, the
that,
yellow's
bold. I
nice.
love it. Well,
But
speaking
these
of
are
the stitching, we love
educated,
this.
high-powered executive type women who they like to stand out, and that's
We
fine.
loved the colorful stitching in the seats. That was one. It's a little thing, but it was a nice feature. Is that yellow then in the yellow?
I don't know.
Because
I
I think it was
haven't been in the
blue.
car for about a year.
Okay.
They
Oh well,
not
let's.
moved away, but they moved to a different town, so we just don't hang out that much anymore.
Oh, I think this one you had didn't have the colorful stitching, it looks like.
No, this is a weird one too that I had because if you go to the shot of the on the Mach-E, if you go to the shot of the Android Auto on the big screen, you have this massive screen. Here, scroll down a little bit more. There you go. So click
Oh,
on the
okay.
Android
This
Auto. Yeah,
the one on the left or
the one on the right.
the one on the right?
Yeah, like why doesn't the Android Auto fill that screen? CarPlay did the same thing, by the way. It just doesn't fill the screen. So like, why are you going to have a 15-inch giant monitor and then not fill the screen? It just seems.
Yeah.
I don't know if newer versions do this better or handle this differently, but I
Like
just thought that was really
I
not
was I was
awesome.
happy with the screen. I was like, oh wow, it's the first to really make a good touch screen for an EV, and I was really happy about that. There's some things I liked about it a little more than the Tesla, some things a
Yeah,
little less. I like the temperature controls. Much prefer that I like that knob, that volume knob. That's
yeah, I like that.
very handy.
Yeah,
And it's one of the most annoying things on the Tesla is trying to adjust the volume from not from the driver's seat. It's fine. You have a scroll wheel on the steering wheel, but if you're not the driver, and the only thing I was like, they did the vertical orientation like the original Model S and Model X, like sort of not gathering that that everyone had realized you want to go vertical. I mean horizontal, and like this should have been a horizontal screen. They just copied the Tesla a little bit too much, and instead of thinking, oh yeah, horizontal would be better.
yeah. Well, when they
Uh,
started the
but
development
it's
on this
huge.
car, Tesla still had it
Yes,
vertical.
Yeah, I know. And it was like, oh, you copied it. you you're a
I
bit
gotta say that is my biggest criticism of the car. Like they're trying to out Tesla. Like Tesla has a screen, we have a bigger screen. Tesla has a weird slit of vents, we have a weird slit of vents. Like, all
well, the
right,
other
get
thing,
out of
well,
here.
no, I'm not gonna, it was one of the first four. So we had some tech issues, but I think that's just because it was very early.
Yeah, mine was good. I thought this was a great car. It's the only people that I have found that don't like this car are people who have 5.0 Mustangs already, and like a lot of that is real
So,
strange
so I think
proto
that's the
masculinity. That's
big,
the Hyundai.
that's
Move
the
on to
big
the Model
discussion.
3.
The Model 3, you know, not as popular as the Model Y, and none of these are going to be as popular as the alternatives, but they are what they are. Yeah, you can talk through them. I'll have a quick response. So,
Yeah, I think the Polestar was a really good alternative last year when it was a front wheel drive or all wheel drive. This year, Polestar upgraded it. You got more range and more power, and now there is a rear wheel drive version that has a little bit different tune suspension. It is much more of a driver's car, much more in line with what you would think of as a European performance sedan, whether it's BMW or Mercedes AMG. It really fits that mold. It's really good dynamically. It's very well sorted. It's neutral handling. It doesn't understeer or push really hard. It's almost got a little tail happy, actually, in my experience, which I thought was just wonderful. I think this is a great car. And on this list, I might recommend the Polestar 2 over the Volvo. I'm sorry, well, definitely over the Volvo, but over the Tesla. I'm not 100% convinced. Again, and it's the father-in-law test, right? Like if I have to recommend, if somebody tells me they're going to drive this thing across the country, I'd probably tell them to get a Tesla. But this one, I like this car better than the Model 3. I think the Highland with the yoke and everything is going to be troublesome. I think this is a better looking car, which I can't, I think a lot of times you would say that, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I think the Polestar 2 is just a sharp looking car, man. I really like this thing.
I was not a real big fan of it. I when I drove it, I thought, okay, I see the appeal of it. It's got a bit of a go-kart, like fancy go-kart feel to it, but it didn't feel as smooth or as good driving to me. The interior was a bit cramped, felt a bit cramped, very low kind of
It's
ceiling.
small. It is
and
smaller.
uh
Yeah.
and I was just like, well, I can see the appeal of it. I see why people like it, but I could never recommend it over a Model 3, or would never pick it over a Model 3. But if you like it, if you get in it and everything just feels good to you, and you like the drive quality, the drive style, and the interior sort of small space, cool. But yeah, this is the one I haven't driven, but I'm in love with this car. So
Yeah, I haven't had any kind of meaningful drive in this other than like just kind of moving around a show floor or something like within a parking lot. So I can't speak to it, but I know how well Hyundai and Kia have done with the EV6 and the Ioniq 5. I can't imagine this is any different. Um, it's got it all, right? It's got kind of its own unique look. It's very 1950s Porsche bathtub in terms of styling. The interior is kind of unlike a lot of other stuff out there. Once again, this is a lot of concept art. This is not what the interior actually is. The production version does have side mirrors. That's a little more like it. And this is a hot car, 300 miles range. It's got its own look to it. It's very streamlined, aerodynamic, and I think this would be an excellent choice that anybody who's been in the market for an electric sedan, if you just cannot bring yourself to buy a Tesla, this is a fine choice.
well, Elon's antics on X aside, and siding with insurrectionists and all that, I honestly, if this has supercharging access, there's a solid chance I would pick this over the Tesla Model 3. I just love the
Yeah.
vehicle. I have to spend some time in it, obviously. Maybe I would drive
Is
it
this a
and
yeah? I
be like, oh, it doesn't drive as good as the Model 3. But I don't I don't necessarily think that will be the case, because just the way it's built, the way it's structured, I feel like it's going to drive really nicely. And I just love how it looks. I love the interior. I love everything about it. So
yeah.
this is in my top tier for sure.
You
Again, I
did
guess
this yesterday
I'm
with the
Korean
EV.
happy apparently, because the Ioniq 5, the EV6, and the Ioniq 6 are like in my top tier with the Tesla Model Y. and
Yeah,
the
I
Model
mean,
3.
they're doing the best job right now. I don't think it's it's not nationalistic or anti-American to recognize that they're doing a great job. I will say this: I like that. I think it's funny that you did this with the Kia yesterday as well. That when you write the article about these Korean cars, you tend to publish exterior shots of the production car and interior shots of the concept car.
I just find what I find as far as the images,
Yeah.
but for sure I like the concept car interiors. Like
Oh
I'm a
yeah.
little
I mean, the goal is always to bring the mirrors inside. They produce like 5% of the car's
yeah.
drag.
Hi, my name is Scott Cooney. I started Clean Technica to promote clean energy and other sustainable alternatives, and for 13 years we've been moving markets. If we had a nickel for every time someone told us they bought their first EV, solar, e-bike, or fill in the blank clean energy solution, we'd be a cable TV channel by now. But we don't get those nickels. So unfortunately, we could use your help to reach a few more people. If just 1% of our audience chipped in a few bucks a month, we could hire dozens of great journalists and promote all sorts of climate solutions. It's easy. Just go to cleantechnica.com/support and sign up with a credit card in seconds. Cancel anytime. But we'll be sending out some cool perks too, so I think you'll want to stick around. With your support, we'll keep leading the charge. Thank you so much.
Okay, so
All right, so
this
let's close that up. Let's go back to the list. Oh, this is the other one, the
well, the other one
BMW.
is the i4, which I don't like at all. I drove it
It's
and I was like, I do not like this car.
I will say this: it drove a lot like the internal combustion BMW.
It's very jumpy. Yeah, it's sort of like when you rent a gas car after having driven
Yeah.
an EV for a long time, and you're like, oh my gosh, this car is out of control. Like, get the saddle on this wild horse. And I was not
Ah,
enjoying that. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I was just too jumpy and
it's yeah,
too
they gave
swervy.
it a very, I would say, throttle tip in, even though it doesn't have a throttle because it's electric, but they have a very aggressive pedal feel where like that first third of the pedal travel is actually like 2/3 of the load sensing. So you get on it a little bit and it gives you that like boost, that hit. And I think that happens because, BMW obviously is a performance car and they're trying to compete with Tesla. They're trying to maybe gain back some of the drivers that they lost to Tesla with that acceleration. So they're trying to give you that sense of like, whoa, this thing's so powerful. It's so fast. Amazing. I love electric. But
I'm sure
I
some
don't think
people
it's
like it more.
successful.
And for
Some
people who
people
like
like
it
it. Yeah.
more, great. I know someone, I don't think he had driven one before he ordered it because he got a very early order, but he had like a few Teslas, early Model S or two Model S's maybe, then one of the first Model 3s, a silver one. And then he ordered i4 long before it was arriving. So I I don't know. Some people might enjoy it. Is this another
Yeah.
concept interior? It looks like, right?
No, that's real.
Okay, cool.
Now,
Well,
but I will say this: BMW is funny, and Audi does this too, where they have like 6 or 7 drive modes. Some of the drive modes are going to be a lot smoother than others. It just kind of depends what mode you're in. So the next
I have
one is
no
the
comment. Yeah, no commentary on these except for the Lucid because I've only driven the Lucid. But
yeah, I've driven the EQS, I've driven the i7. The i7 to me is the first good looking BMW in a long, long time. It is actually big enough to handle that giant
yeah,
beaver face grill.
exactly.
Um,
I agree.
and again, some of that is size based, right? Like if you're going to have a giant grill and it's on a giant car, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, they're
Um,
very like 70s, 80s. I know it's got for me. It reminds me of like a Cadillac from the 80s a little bit, even though
Not a bad thing.
it's yeah. I mean
You roll up
that's
in a sedan DeVille, you're doing great.
it's culture.
Yeah, that's culture. Exactly.
Oh well,
This
you
is
have
exactly what like Boss Hogg would get out of. And, if they were doing a remake of Smokey and the Bandit, he'd
but
have
you
an
don't actually
i7 Polizei.
yeah you don't actually put the Mercedes on your you put the i7 and then you have the Lucid Air Sapphire and the Cadillac Celestiq as the alternatives.
Well, because I think that, I think that for a lot of buyers, the BMW and the S Class are interchangeable. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
sure.
actually think there's a reason to
Okay.
buy the EQS when the i7 is available.
I feel like
I
I
think
would probably prefer the EQS, but I have I don't know.
I mean, it's arguably a better car. It's just it's a lot of screens, it's a lot of tech, it's a lot of overload, and I'm sorry, just lighting up the 3-pointed star and the grill is unforgivably tacky. I
Yeah.
could never, like, if you look at that and you go, that's cool, then people know it's a Mercedes from a mile and a half away. You're an idiot, and I don't want to know you.
Well, regarding your second one, the Lucid Air Sapphire, I love the vehicle. I'm not a big fan of the exterior styling, except in white. I think it was the white.
Yeah.
We've talked about
Well,
this before.
like
It's
I
very
said,
flat,
if you like cars styled by engineers, the Lucid
but
Air Sapphire is the one for
but
you.
but internally, it's so luxurious, it's so nice. I
Yep.
preferred it over the Model S, and I would. There's a solid chance if I had the money for it, I would choose the Lucid Air in this class.
Oh, I'd
of
take the Beamer. That's a nice
the
car.
the Model S, is a
Yeah.
great car and I love it. But I had one, shared one with a couple of guys, and I like it a lot, but I like the Lucid Air more.
The Lucid Air is the bet. Let's just get it out of the way. The
It's the most
Lucid Air
expensive.
is the most finely crafted car you can buy. It is perfect. It is an engineering dream. If you're the type of guy that geeks out over paint quality, over like the design of hinges, the way door seals overlap, the Lucid Air is your car. There is nothing about that vehicle that is accidental or taken to chance or left to chance. They did it absolutely right. That said, there's some stylistic concerns. There's some aesthetic issues.
I've said many times it's too flat and ugly on the outside, but I think there's the white one where I was like, oh, that actually looks good with the white. It's not
it's
like
fine.
excellent. I still pick the Ioniq 6 over it.
I think that i7 in the sapphire blue is like one of the best looking. That's one of the best looking cars you can buy right now. That's a gorgeous car.
But
just as a piece of art, it's
but
gorgeous.
when you sit in the Lucid Air as a passenger or driver, you're just like, oh wow, now this is it. This is life. The only thing is, if we're like trying to avoid buying stuff because we're not aligned with Elon Musk, Lucid is basically owned by Saudi Arabia, so not really a step up there. So
I mean, it wasn't my pick. It was an also consider.
Yes, and you've got the Cadillac Celestiq. If
you're Lenny Kravitz, because they're going to give it to you for free if you're Lenny Kravitz.
Okay.
So if you're going to get a $300,000 Cadillac for free, you should get that.
Oh, I should open some quick pictures of it. There's
that's the Cadillac Celestiq.
Very stretched, extended model.
It's a car.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Cadillac, so that's what it does.
$300,000.
Look at that. That's very weird. It's very Jetsons like. I don't know.
Very weird. And then the Sapphire, that's a hot car.
The Sapphire, yeah, and
I love how they like hide the fact that it doesn't look spectacular.
I mean, when I saw them for years online, I was like, oh, this looks amazing. Then I saw it in real life, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Well, the Model X alternatives, this one you got the most heat for, because
I got the most heat for because they're saying that the first comment is, well, you can't buy that yet. I'm like, no, but this is an article, buy it in 2024 after the January 1st tax credit. It's in the first paragraph, guys. You'll be able to buy this thing in 2024. This is the one to buy because it's just priced right. It's $20,000 less than the base EX90. There's not a ton of 7-passenger SUVs out there that are really capable and well built. If you've ever been in like a Telluride, you already know how good Kia has gotten at building full-size SUVs. For the money, this is going to be the one to buy.
It's an interesting. It wouldn't have come to mind if I'm thinking of a Model X alternative, but it's a really interesting competitor in many regards.
But what do you consider the Model X to be? I mean, is it not an SUV?
I just wouldn't. It's just different class, and I mean the Volvo, a large Volvo is sort of what comes.
I don't see them as being a different class because I look at it, who's the buyer, right?
Yeah, no, that's why I find it interesting, because once I think about it, I was like, okay, I can see how this could be competing in certain ways, depending on what you're looking for and what you don't care about.
Well, yeah, and I think that, like, to me, I would never buy a Model X on my own. To me, a Model X is a family car play. You're loading a bunch of kids in soccer gear and nonsense and Costco shopping into the back of it. And for those reasons, I'm comparing it to other kid haulers.
Yep.
But maybe I'm totally
No, that
missing the
makes
boat.
sense.
Maybe the Model X is something else entirely.
No, it really makes sense. I mean, it's a cheaper option for the same task, and some people don't care about the extra performance or gadgetry or whatever and would prefer the Kia.
But I mean,
Maybe
what
without the
performance
Kia,
are we
they would get
talking
the
about?
X.
Yeah, I mean, what performance are we talking about? The EV9 is still going to be fast. It's still going to be
No.
faster than
Yeah.
whatever Honda Odyssey or
I mean,
Lexus,
put it
Toyota
another
Land
way,
Cruiser you're driving now.
I wouldn't inherently put it up against these other two, the Volvo and the Mercedes. Like, I just would put them in a different category.
Yeah.
But like you said, with limited options on the market and what people want or don't care about, it very much could be a real competitor, top competitor.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people who are they'll write a check for a Hyundai Palisade instead of go finance an EQS.
See, this
And
is so nice.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's gorgeous.
But then you get to the inside, I'm like, well, that's a bit much.
It's a little tacky.
That's overwhelming. I feel like I'm gonna have an epileptic attack, and I don't have epilepsy.
No, I mean the whole thing is just kind of like, I don't know. It's super
very Mercedes
bougie.
in the back. I mean, this is for Mercedes buyers.
Yeah, it's not my thing.
Yeah, so I mean, of those, I don't know. I would still go with the Model X, but
That's fair.
The EV9 being cheaper, if I was like, I need a big car, maybe I would go with EV9. I don't know.
Well, if you had a big car and you wanted to park it in your garage, I think that's another issue. And then, I'll just say this. I have not ever heard of this happening. I am in no way suggesting that this does happen. I am simply suggesting that it has crossed my mind. If the motor or the lift mechanism fails on that Falcon Wing door and that thing slams down and decapitates my toddler, I'm going to be upset.
Oh Lord. So
no, but I think that's a legitimate thing that somebody needs to answer for. If you're going to market that to young families, okay, well, what happens when, you've seen hatches on the back of vehicles, on the back of SUVs fail, and they just wham down really hard. Now I got to worry about the door doing that.
I think they've got a few safeguards in place for that, but still, it's possible, obviously. So anything's possible.
I'm not suggesting that they haven't thought of it. I'm simply suggesting that it's something I'd rather not think about.
We would definitely have seen a story if it happened. So at least
100%
it doesn't happen. But yeah, if it does happen, that would be some bad news. But so this is an interesting one. I also found it surprising, like a lot of readers, that you didn't put in the Rivian or the Ford F-150 Lightning as Cybertruck alternatives.
I don't think so. I don't think the Cybertruck is a truck.
Well, before I saw your comments, I got the point. I mean, as soon as I saw, okay, you put the Hummer EV, I saw the point that you're looking for something not normal, something that stands out as not normal. The Hummer EV is the most fitting. I think it still does compete with the F-150 Lightning, the Chevy Silverado EV to a lot of people. Is very different, but I think there are people who
just Tesla fans. Honestly, if you live, and work with your truck,
no, I've seen truck. I've talked to truck owners who are getting it, plan to get it next. So I think there is overlap. I don't know how much overlap, but yeah, I think this is a fun one. I laughed out loud when I saw Godot. If you like waiting for stuff.
Well, I mean, that's how it feels, right? Like, oh, I put my order in 2019. Well, maybe I'll get it in 2024.
I don't know if it's confirmed, but someone in the comments said that it's pushed off again now to the first quarter, not even January, but first quarter.
But so not mass production, first deliveries.
Yeah, which, I mean, it's supposed to be first deliveries now, mass production mid next year, but someone is saying that it's been pushed off to...
Yeah, it's Freedom EV is the one who's saying that, and he's actually
right.
He's an interesting cat. We've talked about him before on the show, and he's always been in the comments. And I alternate between like, yeah, he knows everything versus to like, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He is like really plugged into this industry, and he does say some stuff sometimes that like sounds like nonsense, but turns out to be right.
Yes, so, yeah, he's very plugged in, and yeah, exactly what you said. Sometimes you're like, what? And then you find out, oh, he was right.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're going to leave it at,
so I'm like,
if it's going to get pushed off again.
Yeah. So I think the funny thing is, I would never get the Hummer EV, and part of me would never get the Cybertruck because of how big and gaudy it is. But there's part of me that loves it, aspects of it. I do love some aspects of it. So, I mean, I have a reservation. I had several reservations in case they honored the full self-driving and locked in at this price and they actually got something going with full self-driving. But
Yeah.
Since they didn't, I canceled all but one reservation. I don't know why I'm keeping the reservation. I mean, just we'll see, but it's too big for me. The Hummer EV is too big for me. They both stand out too much for me. It's not my thing, but
yeah, but to me, that's why I don't think the Rivian and the F-150 and the Silverado are actually Cybertruck competitors, because I think that it's a statement piece.
well,
It's
they're
not,
also too big. I don't like any of I mean, I've driven a Rivian. I loved
Sure.
it. I think the Rivian should be on the list because I think it's a really compelling, like different, unique.
I don't
EV
think so.
startup
I think
option.
it's very mainstream. I've seen a couple of the R1Ss in the neighborhood. They blend right in. They're very normal everyday vehicles. Now, I think a Cybertruck, I think a Rivian is a very good alternative to a Lightning. I think it's a really good alternative to an F-150. I think it's a really good alternative. Honestly, the people I see going for the Rivian are probably coming out of a Honda Ridgeline. That's a more car-like experience in a truck. But I can't take the side, and I say this in the best way. This is not a dig. This is not a criticism. The Cybertruck is not a serious vehicle. The Cybertruck is a statement piece, and the Hummer is a statement piece. So I think that that's really, it's like the Mercedes G-Wagon. You don't buy a G-Wagon to go off-road. You buy a G-Wagon to show off on Miami Beach. I think it's that kind of vehicle. And there might be some guys out there in pickup trucks, especially in like, suburban South Florida, who the heaviest thing they ever move is like a 4x8 sheet of plywood. They're not using it for work, who look at a Cybertruck and go, yeah, that'll do it. I can put my ATV back there. I can, go off-road in the mud. Maybe they haven't really figured out how air suspension works yet, but they'll figure it out in the trails. And they might think the Cybertruck is viable. That's fine, but it's not a work truck. It's not ever going to be.
Well, I think that's like we'll see how it plays out with who buys it, but I do think that is the most fitting. It's not what came to mind for me, but then once I saw it, I was like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. So I think that's the most fitting alt choice, as you said. But we'll see who ends up buying it, who doesn't. I mean, Elon early on was like, I don't know if anyone's gonna buy this. If not, we'll produce a normal truck. And then there was a lot of interest in it, so he dropped that idea. But yeah, we'll see what actually ends up being the population that buys the Cybertruck. But for now, that's our story. We're sticking to it. Joe's got his take.
See y'all tomorrow, boys.
We both love those Korean EVs, man. They are, I think, top of the top. So
they're top of the yeah, exactly. They're better than the Toyotas.
Yeah. All right. Peace.